Presented by RE/MAX Diamond Realty.
Credit, my friends, is an incredibly important thing, and it's something very, very valuable to have if you are either a buyer or a seller. In fact, it's the only way you can actually do any business on Amazon. That is kind of related to what we're talking about. So Liz and Gina are here, fairly in the ballpark. Not at all.
No.
RE/MAX Zone, not Amazon.
Not Amazon,
RE/MAX Zone.
RE/MAX
Okay, well, you
Zone.
guys will get as big as Amazon, but hopefully we're like one of these days. But credit does apply when you're talking about, like, there's something called seller credit, as I understand, right, Gina?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons to that, and seller credit is a means by which a buyer can ask for funding to help with closing costs, which is really important. You know, some buyers out there, and we're going to be focusing on buying real estate, residential real estate, right? So this issue with seller credit comes up, and the reason it comes up is closing costs are typically anywhere from 4 to 6% of the amount you're trying to borrow from the bank. So that could be a hefty sum.
Okay, now my nickname was always El Cheapo. Now, and I always try and find like a good bargain, right? You guys have actually helped me immensely with, my obsession with that. But could I actually make a request for buyer credit in addition to, like, if I was going to use like first-time home buyer? Can I stack them, or are they mutually exclusive?
We've got to clarify, though, that there are costs associated with getting a loan. So the bank will charge you closing costs. So those are associated with you, Jason, getting the loan as the buyer. Now, buyers will ask if they don't have the money. We always tell people, you guys save up because there's fees associated with purchasing property.
Yeah, homes, as we have understood, are not impulse buys.
Exactly. So in some cases, the seller may be willing, it's not a guarantee, to give a credit to help the buyer accomplish their goal in purchasing, but they give a credit towards the closing costs. So it's not a guarantee, it's up to the seller. Now, there's a difference between the seller giving that credit. There are grants available out there. So if a seller gives you credit, then they subtract that from what you're supposed to pull out of your pocket at close of escrow. So again, it's not a guarantee, it's up to the seller. Sometimes the seller will, if they wanted to move a particular piece of property, they might say seller will credit, for example, $5,000 towards the buyer's closing costs.
And this is smart for the seller because they're not devaluing their own property, and it's completely at their prerogative. So this is actually kind of like a slick marketing technique for them.
Well, you were seeing less and less
of
that,
it, exactly.
Oh.
because the market's turning. It's
sellers.
turning into a seller's market now. It's a means by which buyers can find a way to help pay or defer their closing costs. So that's why it comes up. And so what Liz mentioned earlier are grants. There are grants out there. So instead of asking the seller for seller credit, because when the market starts to change, sellers are less likely to say okay to that. Before we would see people asking for up to 4% because every loan has limitations and guidelines. So it also depends on what kind of loan you're getting. So the best way to do this is to talk to your realtor, let them give you advice, because then we can tell you, hey, listen, this is going to work or this isn't going to work. There's a lot of activity with this particular house. This asking for seller credit isn't going to help. But the thing that I always look at, and this is what I wanted to bring up, when you ask for a seller credit, what you're doing is say, I'm going to use really easy numbers. Let's say I'm buying a house for $200,000, and I say, hey, seller, I'm going to buy at, I want to offer $205,000 because I want $5,000 back as a seller credit. For me, what I look at is, if I do that, what I'm really doing is I'm asking the seller to give me back money, but I'm really adding that money into my loan. So now what I'm doing is I'm making mortgage payments based on me adding more money into the loan.
Exactly.
So I'm paying that up. I'm paying it over a 30-year period. And yes, sometimes it's the only way you're going to be able to buy your home if you haven't already saved up the closing costs. But the alternative is what Liz mentioned. If there are grants out there, a grant is money that the federal government or the local government has set aside for these first-time home buyer programs, and that grant is given to you. So why add principal to
On
your
top of
mortgage
your-
payment that you're going to be paying
Exactly.
over 30
I
years.
see.
But just remember to grants.
It's based on funding, as
Funding.
Liz
Right.
mentioned.
The government, there is a first-time home buyer grant that they will give to cover a buyer's closing costs, and there's some limitations. So that is available, subject to funding. And the other thing that is available also is called the CAHOT program, where you, if you wanted to purchase, could apply for a CAHOT loan. It's interest-free, and it's loaned to you to cover your closing costs, but again, subject to funding availability.
And some down payment as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, there's all kinds of interesting programs out there that help first-time home buyers. Honestly, when I first bought, when I was in the market to purchase real estate, when my husband and I bought our first property, none of these programs
Were
existed.
available.
The only thing that was available were 80-20 loans.
So this is very progressive.
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
yes,
and,
yes.
and I say, listen, if you have good credit, you've been employed for 2 years or more, and you're in a good job,
You need
get
that.
out there and buy
Thank you for saying that, because of
something.
course the word credit can be very disambiguated when it comes to like talking about real estate, right? So a credit in the sense that I'm giving you some sort of consideration, some sort of gratuity,
Right.
as you know, from seller to buyer. But also,
Yes.
does my credit have to be picture perfect? My credit score,
Well, just remember,
my FICA,
though,
is to qualify
Right.
for this, because again, it is the
it's
seller's
subject-
prerogative.
It's subject to the bank. So the seller may be willing, but if you're unable to get a loan based on your qualifications, and that's why it's best to come see us. We'll route you to a loan officer, and what they'll do is assist you in the process of getting pre-qualified to see what do you qualify for, what is your credit score, will you go past muster in order to purchase that property. Otherwise, you're spinning your wheels. We don't want you to spin your wheels and waste your time. Find the property you like, and then you're disheartened because you can't qualify for that loan.
Okay, and it seems like it's a lot of information and a lot of red tape to go through, but it's you guys have actually made it like quite
And
easy.
your realtors will guide you.
Saving $5,000 is saving $5,000.
Yeah.
That is no small chunk of change. So thank
Yeah,
you, ladies.
absolutely.
We'll see you next week. And we will see you guys next. Man, I hope you've got as much out of this as I have. This is amazing information. We'll see you next time.
Closed captioning